Hi, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Trina. It's great to have you here for yet another reading vlog, but a different kind of one. August is the month of experimentation for me. In general, I find that for most of my reading vlogs, I have the problem of them getting too long because I can't not talk about books if I like them, you know? I still have a lot of fun making those. It's just good to fit in shorter reading vlogs once in a while. So I thought I would follow up on a kind of video that I made once already on this channel where I read my very first book from a certain author to sort of get my first reaction to this author's writing on camera. Earlier this year, I did that with Brandon Sanderson, which was kind of a mixed results video, I'm not gonna lie, but I'm hoping to get better results with this video where I read two books from an author for the very, very first time. And that author, I'm very excited to say, is gonna be Kingfisher. I like reading popular books, I love fantasy. I've never picked up a Kingfisher before now. I've seen her talked about literally everywhere. Oh my god, the author's blurbed on the back of this book, Paladin's Grace, are Naomi Novik, love. Emily Tesh, love. KJ Charles. I've read some of KJ Charles' books. Naomi Novik and Emily Tesh, that is high praise indeed. Those are two of my favorite authors. So I'm very, very excited to finally read a Kingfisher book. Obviously, I have this beautiful copy of Paladin's Grace that I bought on sale last month that kind of inspired me to want to make this video. I've heard amazing things about her writing style, but I've also heard that she has like different types of writing, different types of books that work better for certain people. She has some fairy tale retellings that I know some people don't like, but they've liked some of her other works, versus I've seen people who love her fairy tale retellings not like some of her other books. So I'm very curious to see where I will fall on that spectrum. The two books I want to read from Kingfisher in this video is first of all Paladin's Grace, which is a romance fantasy that is supposed to be somewhat cozy fantasy in vibe, I believe, about a Paladin, Stefan, whose god that he's a paladin for has died or is left. Yeah, a broken paladin is how he's described in the back, who falls in love with a perfumer, Grace. I've heard such good things about this book and I'm really, really excited to try it. And I couldn't resist buying a copy when I saw these gorgeous old-timey fantasy romance style covers in the shelf because I was like, yes. But I know that Paladin's Grace is like just one book by Kingfisher, so I at least wanted to read two for this video. But again, in the hopes of keeping this video somewhat short, I picked one of Kingfisher's novellas, What Moves the Dead, because it's available on Kindle Unlimited. So I'll be reading What Moves the Dead on my Kindle, and I'll be reading Paladin's Grace. I don't know which one to start with. This one is obviously the longer one versus the novella, What Moves the Dead, but What Moves the Dead is horror, so it might be a little bit like dense to get into. Maybe I start with the novella? Yeah, maybe I start with the shorter novella. First impressions, right off the bat, just about the writing overall, and then I read the more popular right now on booktube book, Paladin's Grace, afterwards. Yeah, let's do that. Maybe we'll start with What Moves the Dead on my Kindle, but we'll have to see. Where's my Kindle? In fact, let's read just the first chapter of What Moves the Dead and get first, like, very, very initial first impressions. I don't even know what this book is about. I know it's a horror novella and I literally know nothing else. I gave the whole plot summary for Paladin's Grace and I don't even know what What Moves the Dead is about. Ooh, the very first line, the very first word in What Moves the Dead is the mushrooms. That's already a great sign for me. I love fungus. I love fungi in books. The first sentence of What Moves the Dead is, "The mushroom's gills were the deep red color of severed muscle, the almost violet shade that contrasts so dreadfully with the pale pink of viscera." Oh, this is one of Kingfisher's retellings. Okay, but it's not a fairy tale retelling. It's a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. I haven't actually read The Fall of the House of Usher. Maybe I should have done that first. My bad. Too late now. And the plot is when Alex Easton, a retired soldier, receives word that their childhood friend Madeline Usher is dying, they race to the ancestral home of the Ushers in the remote countryside of Ruritania. What they find there is a nightmare of fungal growths and possessed wildlife. It's only 166 pages, so I think we're gonna fly through this. Very excited to get started, and I'll let you know what I think. one chapter read in What Moves the Dead. So far, mushroom descriptions, impeccable. Absolutely the book for me. But I do feel like maybe this would be hitting harder if I had read Fall of the House of Usher. Unfortunately, I'm not caught up on my Edgar Allan Poe, so we'll just have to deal with that. It does seem really cool so far, and I am really, really excited to keep going. So far, writing-wise, I can say for Kingfisher, I'm definitely getting a certain voice of it. A little bit of a sarcastic inner main character. Not really sarcastic. A lot of inner narration and like thoughts from the main character as the story progresses. Like the character being like, I'm not much of this, and I really don't think this. And kind of like a tone that's not really old-timey, but it's like trying to be a contemporary take on old-timey. So I'm sort of getting those vibes already of what the writing style could be like. No hard opinions yet. It's only been 11 pages, but I'm excited to keep going. So, in terms of What Moves the Dead so far, it's kind of a creepy old house kind of horror where weird spooky things are happening. Eaton, our main character, is an old friend of Madeline and Roderick Usher, who live in this old manor in a fictional country. I don't know how much is taken from Edgar Allan Poe and how much is Kingfisher's own invention, but these are like fictionalized countries in Europe that have their own histories and have had like wars, and I believe this is the late 1800s, which is really like an interesting time period, and the world building is kind of fascinating. Like the country that the main character Eaton is from is called like Galatia, and in their like language system has like 7 different types of pronouns, and there's a specific pronoun you take when you join the military. So Eaton goes by those pronouns. Eaton comes out to this house, and both Roderick and Madeline are weirdly thin and emaciatedly thin and pale, and seem both very sickly and nervous, which Eaton grew up with them. They never were previously, and this is like the first time in like 10 years that Eaton has seen them. So it's like very odd. The house itself is kind of crumbling, falling apart. It's described as kind of feeling like a tomb, and the bit of land it's on has some weird folk tales from the people in the village about what's wrong with it. The book seems to be about figuring out what is wrong with the house and what is wrong with the Ushers. And is it the house that's making them sick, or is it something else that's making both them and the house sick? We will see. So far, I'm enjoying it. I'm 25% of the way through. It is going really fast. It's a novella. I don't know if there's really enough time to get super attached. Oh, it's raining outside. I don't know if there's enough time to get super attached to the characters because it's such a short book. My only question so far of the writing style is I kind of wish it wasn't in first person, but I know a lot of horror writers like first person because it creates this like more personalized feeling of fear and anxiety. I think for like a more like fairy tale-esque story like this, third person narration would have been even better. Personal taste thing, not an objective opinion, but yeah. Enjoying this, gonna keep going with What Moves the Dead by Kingfisher. It's actually taking me a second to get through this, longer than I thought, but I am still really, really enjoying it. Especially in the last, like, I'm at the 75% of the mark, so I'm almost done. 130 pages through. Like, the fungus element has really picked up in the last 10%, and it's kind of sick. It's kind of cool. I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of interested. I think right now my rating solely hinges on how it ends. That's how it usually is for horror for me. I'm like, yeah, this is horror, that's fine. But the ending. No complaints about the writing style so far. Generally enjoying myself. Excited to see how it ends. Welcome back. I finished my first Kingfisher book. Woo! Officially. I finished What Moves the Dead, as I showed, by Kingfisher. I enjoyed the book. I will say it's probably not my book, like if there's gonna be a book from T. Kingfisher that I would rate 5 stars, it wasn't gonna be What Moves the Dead. But so far, I see a lot of things in their style that I really, really like. Things like adding interesting like gender dynamics into the world building, I think is really cool. Elements of combining science with fantasy magic with... Actually, there is a scientific explanation, but you can also believe a more magical explanation to it if you want to. That kind of vibe I do really enjoy in my horror, so there were a lot of things to really, really like in this book. Overall, I think it was a novella. It was just kind of short. I didn't really get super attached to the characters, so the ending I was kind of like, okay, cool. I wasn't like hands gripping the sides of my chair freaking out about it, but it was a good book and I enjoyed it, and I think it was a good introduction. Like the reason I read that book first is because it wasn't my predicted 5-star of the video. That is what's coming up next, Paladin's Grace, which I'm so excited to start reading. For Paladin's Grace, I can give a little bit more of a plot summary. I think like I mentioned before, it is about a paladin whose god has died. I checked out just the prologue, like the first section that's only like 2 pages. And I think it addresses the fact that Stefan, the main male character, his god dies and he is a paladin. I believe no one ever says this when they're talking about like the series. They're like, oh yeah, he's a paladin. And I'm like, so I don't think I actually know what a paladin is. A paladin is basically like a warrior for a religion. I kind of guessed that much, but like it was good to have it confirmed by like the first page of the book and it's all described. So Stefan is basically like a soldier, a warrior, but like kind of a warrior with like a very, I can imagine like very fixed set of principles and morals, because they're a warrior that they believe they're fighting for like a greater purpose for God. But once his god dies, he's set adrift. He doesn't really know what to do with himself until one day he rescues a perfumer called Grace. So I'm very curious because that seems like the perfect setup for a romance for me, where both characters have their own separate emotional troubles in their own lives. They're going to be going through their own journeys, but by happenstance they collide with each other and like use their love for each other to like save the day. Like that's the kind of like fantasy romance tropes that I really like. So I'm very intrigued, very excited for this. Do I think it's going to be a 5-star? Very up in the air. The difference for like between a 4-star and a 5-star for me in romance is like very personal, but I have high hopes, and I'll probably give an update once I'm a little ways through, and I get a feel for another example of T. Kingfisher's writing style. First little update, I am 92 pages through. The book is 350 pages. I'm having a good time so far. T. Kingfisher can get a little laugh at me. I laughed out loud at certain points, which is always nice and refreshing. And this book, obviously, because it's longer, has a much bigger like world, cast of characters. I know it's part of a series and like an overall world building thing that T. Kingfisher does, so I'm not expecting to get like every single detail of the world building just in this book, because it is a romance primarily, of course, but I am still really intrigued. I like the way that the gods and the saints and everything like that are created in this world, and the way that religion exists, and the way that we're kind of just thrown into it and expected to understand. I'm enjoying that. I'm also noticing that T. Kingfisher writes really detailed side characters. Like all of the characters are named and have distinct personalities, so we can tell them apart and like remember them pretty clearly. They don't bleed together. They're all like interesting and distinct, and that kind of makes this book and also What Moves the Dead kind of feel a little bit quirky, because like when you have that many strong personalities in one story, it's bound to feel a little bit like, okay, like a little bit much, but much in a good way. I do like it. I think if you like that vibe and you like a big cast of characters with a lot of like moving parts, then you would enjoy T. Kingfisher's books. At least that's the part that I've been enjoying so far. Plot-wise, pretty much like I said, paladin, perfumer, he saves her life. Save her was a bit of like an exaggeration. In the scene where they meet for the first time, she is being chased because she tried to pick a flower that she wasn't supposed to. And she and Stefan, Grace and Stefan, are the characters' names, pretend to like be like making out and like frauding against each other against a wall to get the guards of this other sect religion that nobody seems to like to go away. Then Stefan walks her home afterwards because he's quite the gentleman and that like paladins are like quite gentlemanly and protect the innocent. And it is a little bit insta-lovey in terms of like both of them after this like 30-minute encounter are like, why am I obsessed with this person after 30 minutes? Like, I'm so obsessed with them, I can't stop thinking about them. But I like the little explanations as to why that Kingfisher does. Grace, who is a perfumer, is kind of obsessed with the way that Stefan smells. She's like, wow, he smells like gingerbread. Like, how did he smell like gingerbread? That's such an odd thing for a paladin to smell like. Because smell is very important to her, and she's constantly describing things by how they smell, and her impressions of things are based on smell. Then you can understand why like someone having a really good smell would stick with her. She also seems to have like an evil ex-husband storyline backstory, so there's some history there. And then the paladin is kind of obsessed with her because she's pretty funny to him and makes him laugh out loud. And he was like, wow, this might be one of the first times I've laughed out loud since my god died. And as a character who's like depressed and looking for meaning in his life, laughter is a good remedy. So like that's what kind of like draws his attention and makes him keep thinking about her, is that she made him laugh. So I think that is sweet, even though it is a little bit like instantaneous, it's still cute. So yeah, those are the only main plot points. I'll give, like it says in the back of the book, they have come across a failed assassination attempt, but so far we don't know what the consequences for them are going to really be, other than Grace's friend seems to be keeping some secrets. Yeah, I'm having a good time. Don't know yet what rating or what feeling is going to be yet. We're not really deep enough for that, but so far it's just been like a sweet, good time. And also this book is just lovely to hold. Although even just like 100 pages in, I can tell that I'm really kind of obsessed with the world building and like the side characters, which is a great way to get me to read the rest of the interconnected standalones in this series when I'm already obsessed with the side characters that are going to become their main characters. All good news on that front, and we will continue with Paladin's Grace. Hello, we're back, and I've officially finished my second Kingfisher book, my first full-length book from her. And I have kind of like a mixed report to give, but I think overall positive on Kingfisher. Like there's nothing, like no giant red flags that make me dislike the writing style or anything like that. I think my expectations were just a little bit too high for what is at the end of the day a pretty standard romance novel. I didn't feel like I got especially attached to either of the main characters. I did really, really love the world. Okay, I guess I'll start off by talking more about the book. The whole thing kind of spirals into like more of the mystery of the story, which the two main characters get even more wrapped up in. While part of it is solved by the end of the book, it's pretty clear that the other books in the series are meant to solve the other parts of the story. At least I'm hoping they are. I think they will. I think it's pretty clear it's also setting up a larger overall mystery, potentially for the whole series. We'll see, about this like person who's making golems out of dead bodies. It's a whole storyline that doesn't get fully resolved in this book, but is sort of like being set up for. Which was interesting. I'm intrigued. I want to read the rest of the series, especially because I think my favorite part about this book was the side characters, like the cast of side characters. Similar to What Moves the Dead, I felt like every single character really got a lot of detail, which worked out a lot better for a full-length novel than it did in a novella, where it felt like very stuffed with characters. Here it feels like not only is it a full-length novel, it's also the first book in a series, so we know that these characters are going to get more time in the future, so it makes sense why they're getting so much description, these side characters. And then so far that seems like a trademark of the Kingfisher style, is to have these like really detailed, elaborate casts of characters, which I'm not mad about. I do really, really like the side characters. It just kind of ended up being one of those things where I liked the side characters so much that I didn't really care about the main characters in comparison. No offense meant to Grace or Steven. Their individual stories were very sweet, and I can definitely see why people would relate to their individual stories and their journeys and love them as characters. I just, for some reason, I didn't feel that way, probably because my expectations were so high that like I couldn't really just relax and enjoy the book for what it was. Always annoying of me to do that, but there were still a lot of parts of this that I did like. I even tabbed a few times, a couple of things that I thought were sweet, and I think the overall messaging is really nice and really cute, and obviously the cover is still gorgeous. A lot of the parts of the tkingfisher style I do like. I also think the humor really works for me in terms of like, I do find these books to be like very funny. Like I do laugh out loud. I'm sitting here reading and the rest of my family is like, what are you laughing at? And I have to explain to them like the whole backstory of the book in order to explain why I'm laughing. Like I do find them funny. I just personally have found that there is like a level of comedy where it becomes so much that I feel like it's disrupting the pacing of the story or the development of the characters just for the sake of like having a chuckle, or certain elements of their character building only exist for the sake of comedy. And that's where I don't like it. And I did feel like I was kind of on the lookout with this in some places in this book, and I was like, But overall it was funny, it was sweet. It just didn't personally hit for me, and that happens sometimes with romance books. I shouldn't have set my expectations so high for a romance book because you have to be in the right mindset. You have to be in the right mindset, and I just wasn't. But I still gave this book, what did I give this book? 3.5 stars? Yeah, I think I gave it 3.5. It wasn't quite a 4-star to me because it took me a really long time to get through. Like a romance book, I can normally read in like a day or two. I also think I'm going into a bit of a reading slump. Can't help that, but it did take me a weirdly long time to read this like generally short book. I just like wasn't feeling super motivated to pick it up. When I did pick it up, I would read like 100 pages at a time, but then it just like, I couldn't really get myself to pick it up again. So it might have just been like wrong time for me, but that's still fine because I think the point of this video was to try out tkingfisher for the very first time and make sure I just didn't absolutely hate the books. And lo and behold, I really don't. And I'm excited to read more from them. I think Swordheart is one I definitely want to try in terms of getting more from the world building of this book, because I really, really enjoyed the world, and I want more of that. I want more information about it. And reading the rest of these Paladin books because, like I said, I love the side characters. So far, tkingfisher's an author. To give them a generous rating for me, it's probably going to be around a 3.5 to 4 star so far. So not one of my favorite authors yet, but a solid author. Like I think an author I wouldn't be worried to pick up a book from. It's maybe not what I was hoping for. I was hoping for a new favorite author. I'm always hoping for a new favorite author, but I'm still pleased. But that being said, I read 2 books in this video, What Moves the Dead and Paladin's Grace by tkingfisher. Both of them were enjoyable books, but no favorites yet. I would recommend both of them, but I think to different types of people, honestly. Like they did feel like different books. And overall, if I had to pick between the two, I think I would end up saying that What Moves the Dead was my favorite between the two. I really, really liked the fungi elements in that world building, and I really liked the main character as well. I think I'm more excited to dive into the rest of that series than I am to dive into the rest of the Paladin books. But they're pretty close, I would say, overall in rating. But yeah, that is the end of this reasonably short vlog, I hope. I actually don't know how much I filmed for it, but I'm hoping it's pretty short compared to some of my other recent vlogs. As per usual, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, whatever you want to do in the comments below. Let me know what your favorite tkingfisher book is, if you've read any of them before. Or if you want to give recommendations to other people looking in the comments for more from tkingfisher, please feel free to shout them out below so I know what I should pick up next, because I am intrigued. And let me know if there are any other authors that you would want this kind of video for in the future. I'm open to suggestions, as always. But thank you so much, and I'll see you in my next video pretty soon. Bye!